And all right, here we go. Hey, welcome back to Chosen Generation Radio. I'm your host, Pastor Greg. Great to have you with me. And as always, during this segment, very pleased to have the president of Americans for Limited Government, my good friend, Rick Manning. Rick, welcome. Good to have you, sir.
I'm doing great. How are you?
I think many of us are muttering this morning. That's a loaded question, I think, to some degree. Also very pleased to have another member of the Free Enterprise Project. We had Scott Shepard earlier this morning on the program, and very pleased to have a research associate with the Free Enterprise Project, a part of the National Center for Public Policy Research. And we welcome to the program Davis Soderberg. Davis, welcome. So good to have you.
Hey, thanks, Pastor Greg. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Well, Joe has said, come on, man. The government is on its way, and we're here to help you. President Reagan said that those are very dangerous words, but the Barstool Sports, the owner of Barstool Sports, or the founder of it, has taken it upon himself to help in a time of need, in a time of great crisis, small businesses. Talk to us, Davis, about what he's doing.
Yeah, so if there's anything we've learned during the COVID-19 crisis, it's that we probably shouldn't be relying on our government officials for much. So what this ordinary citizen did, Dave Portnoy, who is the founder of Barstool Sports, he was not happy with what Governor Andrew Cuomo did on December 11th when he banned indoor dining once again in New York City. So what Dave did is he went to Twitter and he did one of his famous video rants where he tells you what he thinks. And not only did he shoot down what Governor Andrew Cuomo did, he decided to do something about it. So what he did is he started what he called the Barstool Fund. And people donate to the Barstool Fund, and he takes that money and sends it directly out to small businesses that are struggling financially. Now, there is an application process to get this money. People will send in this application to Dave describing the story behind their small business, why it's so important to them. They sometimes talk about how their small business went back generations and generations and why it's so important for them to get financial help. And if Dave is inspired by your story, he takes this fund money and sends it out to you to help you during the COVID-19 crisis until things open back up and or the pandemic is hence over, which it most likely, who knows when that will be. But anyways, Dave sent this money out to these small businesses, and they're able to use the fund to stay open, and it's really a great movement. And he's done far more than what we could rely on our government officials to do.
That is incredible. Rick, when I hear what Davis is talking about here, that Mr. Portnoy has done, this is exactly what we encourage, right, in the capitalist system, and the other side wants us to think that, that it takes the government in order to accomplish these things. In other words, the government has to take money from people like Mr. Portnoy in order to get him to do something right.
Yeah, that's the basic concept of big government is that you don't have to worry about taking care of your neighbor because the government will do it for you. And that's obviously directly counter to Scripture. It's directly counter to everything that we know is true, because it's a lot easier to help your neighbor rake their yard up, in an easy example, than to wait for a government official to come and do it. because the government official's never going to come. So if you really want your neighbor to have their yard raked or have them help them maintain their local restaurant, perhaps you should pick up a rake yourself and help them, or go to that local restaurant and not only buy a meal and do the like, but tip the waitress extra, because after all, if the restaurant's only allowed to be half full, they're only getting half tips of what they normally would get, which is a massive cut and pay for them. So just be aware that the people who you are frequenting are making a whole lot less than they used to, and there's things we can do as individuals that help them out without being charitable, but just merely recognize that the government shut them down. It's the government that's creating the economic dislocation. It isn't the business's fault. It's not the waitress's fault. So, if you are doing okay during this time, help out the people who are being negatively impacted by this, either directly or through your church or through all the different means are available. But if we sit back and wait for the government to do it, we'll have a never-ending stream of multi-trillion-dollar stimulus packages that are going to be flowing until, at some point, the money faucet runs out.
Well, and let me just throw this in here, too, because some people may be listening to this and thinking, oh, well, Barstool, he's a pretty successful guy, pretty successful entrepreneur, and that's true. He is. And then they may also think, well, yeah, he's given, a little bit here or a little bit there, a few $1,000s, what have you. Folks, they have raised to date $28,266,108 from 195,961 supporters. They have benefited 159 businesses, and they are giving all that they are getting to these businesses to help these individual businesses to stay afloat. Folks like Lisa's Hair Salon, or Chicken Bernie's Red Rooster Inn, or Holly Lane's Bowling Center, or the Dance Studio of Fresno, or La Cucina. I'm just reading off some of these businesses. Athens Pizza and Pasta in Auburn, Washington. Lakeway Restaurant in Ashtabula, Ohio. The list goes on, 159 of them. Davis, give me as you covered this, and obviously, there's a picture here of Justin with Dave Portnoy. Did you get a chance to talk to Dave, and what were you not able to get into the article that really moved you on this?
Personally, I have not talked to Dave. Okay. Obviously, it's very hard to get in contact with him because he is extremely popular. But from what I wish was in the article, of course, it would be awesome to be able to talk to him and get his take on everything, and especially how well the small business owners have received the funds. It's really awesome to watch the FaceTime calls that he gives to these people and tells them that he's going to fund them. They break down in tears, and it just proves to you how much these small businesses mean to them and their livelihood. Now, back to Rick's point, it's so important talking about helping your neighbor here rather than having the government do it, because that is exactly what this Barstool Fund is. There is 195,000 supporters, like you said. And, of course, you hear about on the news the big names like, well, Aaron Rodgers funded it, Elon Musk, Kid Rock, J.J. Watt, Tom Brady, Sylvester Stallone was yesterday. But there are so many other supporters that just send in that little bit of amount that isn't going to make a huge difference. But once all of these people come together and send in these small amounts, it does end up making a big difference for their neighbors, for their fellow countrymen. And that's what's so important, and that's what's so special about the Barstool Fund. And you talk about Dave being super rich at this point, which, yes, he is. but he did start at the same level that so many of these business owners are at right now. He started from absolutely nothing, but through his own perseverance, he achieved the American dream and turned this newspaper that he once owned into a $450 million media company.
And that's what capitalism is about. It is about, you work hard, you work diligently, you start with nothing, and you build the value of the entity that you have to the point that you're able to reap the benefits of it.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Actually, that's one of the great things about the work that's being done by your group. It's showing, really standing up for shareholder value and profits is important, because it's through profits that actually these kind of things happen. It's the dividend check that somebody gets to say, hey, this is extra money. I'm going to send it. I'm going to go help somebody, whether it's through this project or it's helping somebody dig a well in India. It doesn't really matter. It's the profits that come off of our endeavors that allow us to make individual choices about what efforts we want to support. And those who are trying to make it so that companies put profits second and put paying off specific stakeholders first, those companies are in fact doing exactly opposite of that and are creating a huge problem. That's why I really appreciate all stuff you and Justin Danhoff do.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And that's exactly right. Focusing on the profit rather than this stakeholder primacy model of woke capitalism and all of these new rules that they're trying to implement into the corporate world. It ultimately has long-term consequences. And if we want to focus on maximizing profit, it ultimately will lead to things like we're seeing with the Barstool Fund and a better workforce for all.
Well, and it's also holding these corporations accountable, that they should pay attention to and recognize, at least another half, if not more, of the percentage of those both that are watching and that are engaged in investing in their business, rather than only, catering what they do and their public messages and so forth to this very small elitist group.
Right, exactly. And as these companies become more and more woke, just like you said, it gives the hierarchy of the business, whether it's the CEO or the board members, more leeway to do exactly what they want and to satisfy their own political and social agenda.
Well, and I would have to think now, with a new administration and with the direction that these 13 executive orders that were signed, or 17 that were signed yesterday, and more that are promised to come today, along with the positioning of individuals like, for example, a transgendered individual who has now been put into place at Health and Human Services, where they are going to be setting up policies having to do with sex change and potentially even the reversal of gender of young children at the bequest of the woke. But it also has to do with programming, right? I mean, and those are the kinds of things, again, that impact the bottom line of those that are investing in these media conglomerates and other companies. That makes sense?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Rick.
No, Davis. No, I was asking if how I kind of posed that question, if you will, if that made sense.
Yeah, 100%. I think you're spot on. And with this new administration, we are going to see a push towards corporate wokeism. And it's really an alarming reality that we're about to get into. And we just have to hope groups that I work for, that Rick works for, we do our best to push back against it.
Well, there's one other piece, too, that I think is important for us to discuss, gentlemen, when we come back. And that is, and we covered it in part with Scott, but Trump administration and Trump supporters, like, for example, Mike Lindo, whose organizations and companies are being punished for the fact that they supported the previous administration. And, you know, again, these are the kinds of things where we've got to hold these corporations accountable for that kind of behavior. We'll be back with more right after this on Chosen Generation Radio.